The dark forest did not greet him with darkness. The snow lay smooth, as if gently pressed flat by careful hands, and glowed quietly in the twilight. Not dazzling, but soft, like the muted flame of candles in a church. The branches of the trees stretched upward, intertwining, yet they did not form an oppressive vault. On the contrary, there was plenty of space between them, filled with cold air that smelled of pine, resin, and something sweet, almost honey-like. The hunter walked with confidence. His boots creaked beneath his feet, the sound clear, familiar, earthly, and it calmed him. He had known this forest since childhood. He knew where the paths disappeared, where one could sink into a drift, and where animals stepped out into open clearings. And he knew that all the talk about the dark forest was nothing more than stories for children and for those afraid of their own thoughts. "Dark, you say," he muttered under his breath, stopping to catch his breath. "If only you knew how much light I've seen here." Somewhere to the left, a shadow flickered. A fox. It did not run away, only stopped, looked at him with black, gleaming eyes, calmly, almost indifferently, and then slowly vanished among the trees. The birds did not raise an alarm. On the contrary, their quiet chirping flowed evenly, as if someone were holding an invisible melody. The hunter smiled. "You see," he said aloud, not knowing whom he was addressing, "no one bothers anyone here." He was not hunting game. Today he was looking for a fir tree. Christmas was already close, and the old artificial one that stood in the corner every year had long been irritating him. The needles had fallen off in the very first years, there was no scent, and his wife kept saying she wanted a real one. He had postponed the decision until someone in a shop casually remarked, "And in the dark forest, the fir trees are like postcards." Everyone laughed. The hunter laughed too. Now he was going there alone. He did not notice the fir tree at once. It stood a little apart, as if it did not want to draw attention. Slender, even, with thick dark green branches dusted with snow. Not too tall, just right to fit in a room. When the hunter stepped closer, the air around him grew warmer, and he felt a strange, almost childlike excitement, the kind that comes before a holiday. "Well," he said, resting the axe on his shoulder, "you won't find a better one." He touched the bark. Cold, ordinary, no magic. The hunter swung the axe. The first blow was dull, the second softer. On the third, he suddenly felt that the forest was listening. The birds fell silent. The wind stopped. Even the snow seemed to pause in its settling from the branches. He thought he heard a quiet chime somewhere above, not sharp, not alarming, but pure and crystalline, like a distant Christmas bell. The hunter froze, listening. "Just my imagination," he said quickly, and struck again. The fir tree did not creak, it did not crack. It fell slowly, almost gently, gliding through the air as if someone were supporting it so it wouldn't hit the ground. When it lay on the snow, not a single branch broke. The hunter stood there, breathing heavily. His heart was pounding, not from fear, but of a strange relief, as if he had done something right, something long planned yet constantly postponed. "That's it," he whispered. He tied a rope around the trunk, hoisted the fir tree onto his shoulder, and headed back. The forest slowly came back to life. Branches rustled again. Somewhere in the depths, ice chimed. A bird began to sing. Everything returned to how it had been before. Almost. When the hunter disappeared among the trees, the snow in the clearing began to settle on its own. The footprints of his boots and the dragged trunk slowly vanished, as if they had never existed. And where the fir tree had stood, the dark earth was quickly covered with a white, pristine layer. The forest was in no hurry. The forest knew how to wait. The fir tree took its place of honor by the window, where the old dresser used to stand. The hunter set it straight, then even stepped back a little, squinting as he judged it. It looked as if it had always been part of this house, not chuja, not brought in from outside. "Well?" he asked, turning to his wife. She was silent for a few seconds, studying the green branches dusted with snow that still had not melted. Then she smiled, wide and warm, without the usual fatigue in the corners of her eyes. "It's perfect," she said. "Simply perfect." The children immediately rushed to fetch the boxes of decorations. Glass ornaments chimed, but not one slipped from their hands. Even the smallest one, with a crack that threatened every year to shatter, was surprisingly sturdy today. The garlands lay evenly, as if they knew on their own where they belonged. "Dad, look," the younger son exclaimed. "It's glowing." The hunter bent closer. There was no light, at least not the kind one could call light, but between the branches there seemed to linger a warm radiance, like in a room where candles had just been extinguished. "Must be from the window," he said, though the window was covered. When they lit the real candles, the old family tradition, the flames flared up evenly and calmly. No flickering, no smoke. The room grew warm, almost comfortably heavy with coziness. That night, the hunter dreamed nothing. No dreams, no fragments. He woke at dawn with a strange feeling of lightness, as if something heavy that had pressed on his chest for years had been lifted. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread. "You're up early," his wife said, turning to him with a smile. "I thought you might want to have breakfast together." She spoke calmly, too calmly. Mornings used to hang heavy with tension between them, small grievances, silent reproaches, the traces of old arguments. Today, nothing. "You remember," he began, and suddenly fell silent. He wanted to say, "You remember how we argued last Christmas," but the memory slipped away. He knew there had been an argument. He felt its shadow, but he couldn't remember what it had been about. That evening, he stopped alone in front of the fir tree. The candles were already burning low, yet the room did not grow darker. "Good choice," he whispered. And in that moment, he realized he could not remember why he had hesitated so long to go into that forest. The news spread faster than the first snow could crust over on the road. "Have you seen the hunter's tree? The kind that takes your breath away. From the dark forest," they say. In the shop, by the bakery, at the bus stop, people whispered everywhere, but with a sparkle in their eyes, as if sharing not gossip, but a secret that warmed them from the inside. People began to smile more often. They stopped to talk without hurry. Old quarrels seemed to lose their meaning. The first to go was a young farmer from the outskirts. He returned by evening, dragging behind him a fir tree taller than the hunter's. The snow on its branches did not melt even by the stove, and the house immediately felt warmer. "It was like it asked for me," he told the neighbors, just standing there, waiting. The next day, 2 more went into the forest, then more. The path once used only by hunters grew wider, and yet, strangely, almost no tracks remained on it. The town was changing slowly, almost imperceptibly. In the mornings, people woke without heaviness in their chests. In the evenings, they did not quarrel over trifles. Candles burned in homes, and no one feared they would burn down to the end. Old Marta, who lived at the forest's edge, watched it all in silence. She sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, and every time someone passed with a fir tree, she turned away. "They're not yours," she muttered, "not meant for homes." Few listened to her. Liam's mother's shop grew crowded. People bought ornaments, candles, ribbons, but when it came to fir trees, Liam only shook his head. "We don't sell live ones," he repeated calmly. "Why buy them when the forest is full?" People laughed. "This year the forest is generous." Liam said nothing. He stood behind the counter, gripping the wooden surface so tightly his fingers turned white. In the evenings, when the shop closed, he went outside and stared for a long time toward the forest. The light above the town was warm, almost festive, but above the trees was a different glow, softer, deeper, like breathing. "It's begun," he said to his mother one night. She did not answer at once. She only adjusted her scarf and sighed. I thought this year it would pass us by." Meanwhile, something strange was happening in the houses with fir trees. People were happy, but they began to forget small things. Someone could no longer remember the last time they had cried. Someone else, what they had stopped speaking to their brother over. It didn't frighten them. On the contrary, it felt like relief. In the hunter's house, it was quiet and bright. He sat by the fir tree, trying to remember why he had once feared the dark forest. Only fragments surfaced in his mind. A prohibition, someone's voice, a promise made long ago, but without meaning, without shape. "The important thing is that we're well," his wife said, sitting beside him, "isn't it?" He nodded, and this time he felt no doubt at all. On the edge of town, a bus stopped with a soft squeal. The driver opened the doors and a stream of warm light spilled into the cold air from the cabin. The first passenger stepped out, pulling her scarf tighter. Mira breathed in the familiar air, pine-scented, frosty, filled with holiday, and smiled. "I'm home," she whispered. The bus pulled away, leaving behind a cloud of steam and the smell of diesel that quickly dissolved in the frosty air. Mira stood at the stop with her suitcase in hand, staring ahead for a few seconds as if afraid to blink. The town looked familiar and yet strangely new. The lights on the houses burned more evenly, more warmly than in her memories, and the snow beneath her feet seemed to glow from within. "Mira?" a voice called. She turned and saw Owen, the beaker, who remembered her back when she was still a schoolgirl. His face was reddened by the cold, but his smile was calm, almost carefree. "So you've come back," he said, as if he had known it in advance. "That's good." "Thank you," Mira replied, a little surprised by his tone. "Merry Christmas." "And to you." He nodded and went on his way, softly humming something festive. Too good, a thought flashed through her mind. She pushed it aside at once. The big city teaches suspicion. Here, at home, things are simpler. On the way, Mira greeted people. Someone invited her in for hot tea. Someone asked about her studies. But everyone spoke in the same gentle manner, without the familiar sharpness, without the small barbs she remembered from childhood. "Have you noticed?" a neighbor said, catching up with her at the corner. "This year's Christmas is special." "In what way?" Mira asked. The woman hesitated, as if searching for words that kept slipping away. "It's just light on the heart." Mira nodded, but something tightened inside her. Lightness can take many forms. She passed houses with fir trees standing in the windows. Almost all of them were real. Almost all of them were strangely alike. Their branches were thick and perfect, the decorations tastefully chosen, as if some invisible hand had helped the owners. And in every house was light, even where the garlands had not yet been switched on. "Beautiful, aren't they?" said a man stepping out through his gate. "From the dark forest." The words hit her like cold water. Mira stopped. "From where?" she asked, though she'd heard correctly. "From the dark one," he laughed. "Turns out it's not so dark after all." She walked on faster than she had planned. A memory surfaced suddenly. Little Mira, her hand in her mother's, and a stern voice saying, "Don't go there, and don't take fir trees from there." Back then, she hadn't asked why. She simply remembered. She stopped in front of her own house. The windows glowed with warm yellow light. A wreath of kine hung on the porch, new, thick, fragrant. Mira breathed in and caught that same sweet scent she'd noticed in town, only stronger. The door opened before she could knock. "You've arrived," her mother said, hugging her. Her voice was gentle, calm. Too calm. "Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas," her mother replied, not letting go. "Come in, you'll like how things are this year." In the living room stood a fir tree, a real one, perfect. A chill ran down Mira's spine. "It's beautiful," she said cautiously. "Where did you get it?" Her mother smiled, looking not at Mira but at the tree. "From the forest," she answered simply. "It's very generous there right now." Mira said nothing more. She only thought that for the first time in a long while she felt at home, and at the same time like a guest. And somewhere deep in the forest, something quietly responded to her steps. Mira left the house under the pretext of taking a walk before it even got dark. She felt short of air, even though the house was warm and cozy. Too cozy. The fir tree stood in the living room, silent and beautiful, and Mira kept catching herself on the thought that she didn't want to turn her back on it. The street led toward the town center, where it was always a little more crowded, a little noisier. That was exactly what she wanted. Reality. Ordinary noise, footsteps, voices, stray remarks. The shop stood on the corner, just as before, a wooden sign with slightly faded letters, a display window with small holiday decorations that changed from year to year, but always looked familiar. Mira stopped, peering at her reflection in the glass, when suddenly the door opened. "Come in, don't stand out in the cold." The voice was low, calm. She lifted her eyes. Liam had hardly changed, and yet he was completely different. Taller than she remembered, with a slightly tired gaze and the same attentiveness that had once annoyed her and now, for some reason, felt calming. He looked at her as if her appearance did not surprise him. "Hi," Mira said. "You've grown." "And you came back," he replied. The corners of his lips twitched faintly. "Come in." Inside it smelled of wood, wax, and spices. There was no fir tree, only wreaths, garlands, boxes of candles. The light was warm but not glaring, as if someone had deliberately kept it from becoming too bright. "You don't sell fir trees?" Mira asked, looking around. "No," Liam answered too quickly. "We don't." "That's strange. Everyone's talking about them now." He shrugged as he arranged a new batch of candles on the shelves. Not everything everyone wants should be brought into the house. Mira looked at him more closely. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked softly. Liam froze. For a moment, the shop grew so quiet that Mira could hear her own breathing. "Feel what?" he asked carefully. "That things are different here." She searched for words. "People are happy, but as if they're not entirely themselves." He finally looked straight into her eyes. "You were always observant. That's why I was afraid you'd come back at just this time." "Afraid?" Mira smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's not very welcoming." "It's honest." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Have you already seen the fir tree at your place?" "Yes." "And what did you feel?" Mira thought for a moment. "Like something is trying to do me good without my permission." Liam nodded, slowly, heavily. "Exactly." The shop door opened, letting in cold air and 2 customers. Liam changed instantly, smiled, spoke politely but reservedly. When the people left, he became serious again. "Listen, if you can, don't decorate the tree and don't light candles on it." "Why?" He silenced longer than a simple answer would allow. "Because some things only begin to work when you accept them, and the forest is very patient." A chill ran down Mira's spine again. "You know more than you're saying." "I do, that I can't say everything yet." She took a step toward the exit, then stopped. "Liam," she said without turning, "I'm glad you're here." He didn't answer. But when the door closed, the shop grew a little darker, as if the light had taken a step back. Mira was walking home slowly, even though the cold was already creeping through her coat. Liam's words wouldn't let her go. Some things only begin to work when you accept them. She repeated the phrase in her mind, trying to understand why it felt so unsettling, even though everything around her looked calm and festive. A small crowd had gathered in the central square. Children were laughing, someone was playing a harmonica, hot cider was being sold. Mira stopped to watch. Everything was too harmonious. No one was pushing, no one raised their voice. Even the laughter sounded even, without strain. "Excuse me," said a woman beside her, accidentally brushing Mira's shoulder. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine," Mira replied, automatically. The woman smiled, the same way everyone here did. Softly. Identically.
Suddenly, Mira heard someone calling a child. "Ellie, come here," a man said, squatting down and holding out his arms. A little girl, about 5 years old, stopped, looked at him with a long, attentive gaze, and took a step back. "Who are you?" she asked, without fear, just with curiosity. The crowd around them didn't seem to understand right away what had happened. The man froze. The smile on his face trembled but did not disappear. "All right," he said. "Let's go home." He took the girl by the hand. She didn't resist. Mira stepped back, feeling a ringing in her ears. This isn't a coincidence, she realized. This is the beginning. At home, her mother greeted her with the same gentle smile. "You're cold," she said. "I've made some tea." "Mom," Mira looked at the fir tree. "Do you remember how we used to decorate it together? The old artificial one?" Her mother paused. For too long. "We decorated it," she said at last. "It was good." "And what exactly was good?" Mira pressed. Her mother smiled again. "Everything." That night, Mira didn't sleep. She sat in her room, listening to the quiet of the house. The fir tree in the living room crackled faintly, even though there were no candles on it. From time to time, she thought she heard a chime, very distant, almost tender. Closer to morning, Mira remembered, clearly, painfully. Never take a fir tree from the dark forest. She sat up in bed, clutching the blanket, and whispered into the darkness. Liam was right. And somewhere beyond the window, the forest answered softly, as if someone had taken another step forward.
Mira came to the shop before it opened. The town was only just waking up, slowly, without haste, as if it had no reason to hurry anywhere. The snow on the road lay smooth and untouched, and for some reason that frightened her more than the chaos of footprints ever could. The light in the shop was already on. Liam stood behind the counter, wiping the glass display, though it was spotless already. When he heard footsteps, he didn't turn right away, as if he knew who had come. "I saw it," Mira said, instead of a greeting. Her voice was quiet but steady. The child. She didn't recognize her father. Liam slowly set the cloth down and only then looked at her. There was no surprise in his eyes, only fatigue. "So it's speeding up," he said. "You knew this would happen." "I knew it could happen." Mira stepped closer. It was warm in the shop, but a cold hung between them, tense, sharp. "You didn't tell me the most important thing," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "What exactly the forest takes." Liam silent for a few seconds. Then he gestured for her to come behind the counter into the small room at the back, where old ledgers and boxes of yellowed postcards were kept. "Because it's not a truth that's easy to accept," he said. He sat on the edge of the table. Mira remained standing. "The dark forest isn't evil," Liam began. "It's an answer. For centuries, people came to it with pain, with loss, with exhaustion from living, and the forest took that away. It made the heart lighter." "But," Mira asked softly, "but pain is part of memory, and memory is part of love." He looked up at her. "The fir tree is a bridge. When you bring it into your home, you let the forest into your life. At first, it takes small things, resentment, quarrels, fear, and then it takes what doesn't hurt to lose, but without which nothing is truly real." Mira exhaled slowly. "Then why don't people stop?" "Because it feels good," Alan answered honestly. "Because for the first time in a long while, they feel fine." She stepped closer to him. "And your family?" Liam clenched his fingers. "My father brought a fir tree home when I was a child. My mother became happy, quiet. She stopped getting angry, stopped crying. And then one day she didn't recognize me. She looked at me and smiled like a kind stranger." Something tightened in Mira's chest. "And you?" "I remembered," he said. "Someone always has to remember. The The forest doesn't take everyone the same way. He stood up. Only a single step remained between them. Now it has noticed you, Mira. I can feel it, she whispered, like someone is touching my thoughts. Liam reached out, slowly, carefully, as if afraid to frighten her. His fingers touched her palm. The warmth was real, not imposed, not perfect. You shouldn't stay here, Alan said. I'll find a way. And if there is no way, she squeezed his hand in return. If the forest has already made its choice. He leaned closer, their foreheads almost touched. Then I won't let you go through this alone. Their kiss was quiet, uncertain, not festive, not sweet. There was too much fear in it and too much truth, and that was precisely why it was real. For a moment, Mira thought the light in the shop went out, and then it returned, slightly dimmer than before. Somewhere far away, deep within the dark forest, a bell rang. This time it didn't sound festive. It was calling. Mira and Liam were still in the small room behind the counter. Their hands, still touching, held warmth, but outside, the city looked entirely different than a minute ago. Fog had begun to creep down from the forest, covering the central square, making the glow of the garlands murky and the people indistinct silhouettes. "This isn't natural," Mira whispered. "I don't remember anything like this." "The forest has awakened," Liam replied softly, "and not just for beauty." They stepped outside, and the cold that had been pleasant moments ago now bit sharply. People in the square began to act strangely. They laughed, but with a faint edge of anxiety. Some fell silent, while others froze completely, staring at the forest. "What is it doing?" Mira asked, squeezing his hand. "It's testing who is truly ready to accept it," Liam said, looking at her seriously. "We need to act, otherwise it will affect the people more severely." Suddenly, a cry rang out from the crowd. Liam dashed forward, Mira right behind him. At the edge of the square stood the hunter, the same one who had brought the fir tree. His eyes were wide, his hands trembling. "What happened?" Mira shouted. I can't stop it. The tree, it's growing right out of the ground, and not just in my home." Mira and Liam ran after him, and indeed, wherever the fir trees stood, the ground beneath their branches began to crack. The forest was releasing something alive, luminous, and at the same time dangerous. People tried to step back, but their movements slowed, as if they were losing control over themselves. "We have to stop this together," Liam said, squeezing her hand even tighter. "Otherwise, the city will be engulfed in darkness that leaves no choice." Mira felt her heart pounding and adrenaline tightening her stomach. They looked at each other, and in that moment, fear and anxiety transformed into something else, resolve. "All right," she said. "What do we do?" He nodded and led her toward the shop, where candles and old books lay on the shelves. Liam grabbed one, flipping through pages filled with drawings of symbols and runes. "This is what can help us," he explained. "The forest listens only to those who are ready to confront it together." Mira leaned over, studying the pages. Her fingers brushed his, and at that moment an imperceptible but powerful connection passed between them. Fear and determination became shared, and their hearts synchronized. "It will be frightening," Liam said softly, "but together we can manage." She took a deep breath, feeling the cold outside become part of their energy. "I'm with you, until the end." And at that moment, the forest advancing on the city seemed to hear these words. The darkness grew thicker, but for Mira and Liam it was no longer an obstacle, it was a challenge they had accepted together. Their fingers intertwined even tighter, resolve and fear, closeness and feeling entwined, making them unshakable. "Let's go," Liam said, and together they rushed into the heart of the dark forest, where something dangerous and unstoppable was already beginning. Mira and Liam raced through the city, now half empty, while the snow around them seemed to come alive, rising into the air and twisting into strange spirals.
Every fir tree growing from the ground pushed people back, making them tremble and lose control. The forest didn't seem evil, rather it was alive, strong, and uncontrollable. "We need to reach the old path that leads to the heart of the forest," Liam shouted, nearly out of breath. "That's where we can stop this." "And if the trees are stronger there?" Mira's voice trembled, though she tried not to show it. "We're stronger together," he replied, squeezing her hand, "not just in strength, but in resolve." They entered the forest. The trees were tall and dense, yet there was a strange lightness. The glow of the city's garlands and candles still faintly filtered through the snow, and the air smelled of pine and frost mixed with something magical, the scent of a new beginning. Suddenly, thin but sturdy branches burst out from beneath the snow. They lunged at the pair, but Liam skillfully pushed Mira aside and she ducked and dodged. Their hands intertwined again. Fear and the need for support made their movements coordinated, almost like a dance. "They're reacting to us," said Mira, when they managed to pause in a small clearing. "The forest senses our fear." "And our determination," added Liam. "We must be certain that we are together." He turned to her. Their faces were close, their breaths mingling with the cold air, eyes burning with understanding. Mira felt fear transforming into something else. Warmth, safety, a feeling that could not be hidden. "Liam," she whispered, "I'm scared, but with you, everything feels possible." He smiled softly, and it was not a playful smile, but a promise. "We'll get through this, together." They stepped forward and reached the heart of the forest, an ancient tree surrounded by a ring of light. The ground trembled and young firs sprouted, attempting to spread through the forest. Liam took out the candles and opened the old book of signs, while Mira helped him maintain balance, as the ground beneath them was slippery and unstable. "I'll support you," she whispered, pressing against his shoulder. "Don't let go." "Never," Liam replied, and their fingers intertwined even tighter. They began placing the candle symbols on the ground around the tree, reciting the old words from the book. The forest began to respond. Branches froze, the wind subsided, and the snow softened, floating like feathers. But on the horizon appeared a shadow, dark, moving, threatening to break through the protective circle. "You need to stay close," Liam said, looking into her eyes. "Hold my hand." Mira grasped him, feeling her heartbeat synchronize with his. Together they recited the spell, and their hearts and energy began radiating a warm bluish light that gradually enveloped all the young firs. The darkness receded slowly, and the forest grew calm and quiet. At the last moment, Liam pulled Mira close, and they both fell onto the snow, embracing. Their breaths mingled, hearts beating in unison, surrounded by a strange, magical glow that nearly blinded them. "We did it," Mira whispered, feeling the warmth not only from the magic, but from Liam's closeness. "Yes," he replied softly. "Together we are stronger." This time their kiss was long, confident, without tremor. The combination of fear and resolve transformed into true intimacy. The forest stood peaceful, and at last they could exhale, together.